This is a fiddle, and this is a violin. At first glance, it would seem impossible to tell the difference between these two instruments. Well, actually, this one has a fifth string, and this one was made about 200 years before this one, and they both have very minute specification differences. In spite of these things, though, they are the same instrument. They share the exact same scale length and produce the same sound. So, what's the difference? To figure this out, we'll have to go back to the 16th century because every good superhero has an origin story. The first maker of the violin, as we know it today, is credited to be Andrea Amati of Cremona, Italy. He was not without influence, though. Previous instruments had been used in which a bow was used to produce sound. Some examples are the erhu, which was invented in ancient China, and the Arabian rebec, which was introduced in the Middle Ages. Anyway, people began to take notice of the sound produced by this beautiful instrument, and it began to grow rapidly. Soon it was very prominent in Baroque, classical, and Romantic music, and is still one of the most popular instruments today. When the British took the violin to Scotland, it became extremely popular in folk music by the 17th century. The Scots had previously had instruments called fiddles that had been around since the 8th century, so they just dubbed the new violins fiddles as well. Fiddle music began to emerge as Scottish folk players began making up their own compositions, using older influences of previous musical periods as well as their own innovations. It was at that point that the fiddle began to get a totally different sound than the violin, and that was because of the way it was played. Here's an example. If you've ever heard a piece of classical music on piano, it sounds totally different than a jazz piano piece. I'll link 2 examples you can listen to in the description. After listening, you can tell it's the same instrument and they share similar influences, yet the music produced is as different as day and night. Here's another difference I've noticed. There are some exceptions, but violin is generally scored and fiddle is generally improvised. This is why you recognize a violin piece almost instantly, because the player is replicating a piece already written by the composer. Fiddle tunes are a bit harder to recognize because each player has the freedom to interpret it their own way. There's a basic melody, but everything else can be tweaked as the player chooses. This is also a parallel to jazz, in which the band leader wrote out a basic melody and everything else was completely improvised. So, what's the difference? It all comes down to the style in which the instrument is played and where those styles originated from. The violin being from Italy, where composers used it in their arrangements and everybody plays those arrangements, and the fiddle being from Scotland, where it's entirely up to the player to decide the arrangement. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you have not already. See y'all in the next video.